Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today, thousands of our fellow Scots are worrying about their mortgage payments. Our junior doctors are considering 3 days of strike action because of low pay. And every one of our public services is creaking through a lack of investment. These are just some of the very real and pressing issues facing the people of Scotland right now. So people watching today will be wondering why Scotland's parliamentarians aren't talking about their priorities. Instead, here we are discussing a fantasy constitution for an independent Scotland that the people do not want. Why is this the most pressing topic when every other part of Scottish life, from health to education, the economy to transport, is in dire need of attention? Let us be honest. No, thank you, not just now. Let us be honest and clear to anyone watching why we're having this debate today. We're having this debate today because of the SNP convention in Dundee at the weekend and the need for the SNP leadership to kid on to the grassroots that they are making progress when they aren't. We're therefore having to indulge in an exercise in SNP internal party management, as well as a desperate attempt for the SNP to try and be relevant at the next general election. At the weekend, SNP members were asked to ignore the blue police tents, the opinion polls and other minor issues like the currency and borders, the promised referendum date in October, and instead take their imagination for a walk up to the top of the hill once again. To imagine a world where Scotland is free, where everyone agrees with each other and the scary problems of the outside world daren't intrude. And while they're doing that, please don't... OK, I'll take an intervention from the Minister.
I'm glad Mr Bibby has chosen to give way. He talks about imagination. I'd like to hear what the imagination of the Labour Party is in relation to these matters. Does the Labour Party believe fundamentally that people's rights should be set out in a codified written constitution, or do they believe in the supremacy of the philosophy of the sovereignty of Westminster Parliament, at which they can be changed at the whim of a government?
Neil Bibby, I can give you the time back.
Well, we do believe there should be a change in the government at Westminster, and we need a Labour government to bring about the social, economic and political change that Scotland and the rest of the UK needs. And we'll be looking forward to setting our plans for the general election in the coming weeks and months. And because the SNP members are being asked not to ask any hard questions and about an abysmal record in public services and a failure to make a credible case for Scottish independence which can command the support of fellow Scots. A case the government presumably know they are failing to make, because at the weekend Humza Yousaf shifted the goalposts, so much so that he can apparently now achieve independence without a majority of people actually voting for it or the SNP. The previous plans for a de facto referendum lacked credibility with the public and many inside the SNP too, but the new plans are frankly ludicrous, and the government benches know it. This paper isn't a game changer, and the strategy hasn't been thought through. For example, a special envoy to the EU was announced at the weekend, but the EU has already indicated they won't speak to them. There are a number of other many questions I could ask about the inconsistencies on thresholds that a bowling club constitutions wouldn't have, and other issues, but, Presiding Officer, doing so would be completely pointless. Because back in the real world, Presiding Officer, this government is promising people in its document basic rights in the future, but it's failing to get the basics right for people today. Scots are no longer falling for the SNP's empty promises and just accepting what they say. We already have legislation on climate change targets and on homelessness too, but climate progress is off track and homelessness is at a high. The SNP claim they want to protect the rights of islanders, but this government can't even sort out the ferries. The SNP say they want to defend and enshrine local government, but they and the Greens have cut a combined total of £6 billion from council budgets over the last decade. And the SNP say they want to protect a right to healthcare, but have broken the treatment time guarantee, a law they passed over 500,000 times. Presiding Officer, we do not need Police Scotland to tell us whether this is a government of lawbreakers. The Cabinet Secretary tells us today we need a written constitution for an independent Scotland to tackle these issues, when what people need is competent government focused on their priorities. Let's contrast that with another announcement last week. Presiding Officer, while the First Minister Humza Yousaf was unveiling his imaginary constitution for an independent Scotland, there was another political speech in Scotland. Keir Starmer the man who most... Keir Starmer, the man who most Scots, in fact most people across the UK, want to be our next Prime Minister, was setting out a real plan to secure our energy supply, green our economy and create jobs here in Scotland. The SNP promised and abandoned plans for a publicly owned energy company, but Labour will create a publicly owned GB energy company headquartered here in Scotland. So while the SNP manage a divided party and play fantasy politics, wasting taxpayers' cash on papers described by the Minister for Independence as campaigning tools for SNP activists, Labour is getting down to the real business. We have a plan for real change, a plan to fix the mess our country is in by tackling the everyday problems facing Scotland. Presiding Officer, the next general election won't be a de facto referendum. It will be a general election. The latest poll suggests Labour gaining more and more support in Scotland, because whether you voted yes or you voted no, the Tories need to go. And while the SNP talk to themselves about themselves, we will seek to offer Scotland the economic, the social and the political change it needs. I move the amendment in my name.